What if the training under Anko and Kakashi led Team 7 to face their greatest challenges yet? How will their bonds and skills be tested as they push toward their ultimate goals? Let's dive into the thrilling conclusion of this alternate storyline. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you missed parts 1, 2, and 3 of What If Team 7 Had a Second Sensei, I highly recommend you check them out first. Links are in the description. In this final part, we'll witness how Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura navigate their most significant trials, yet under the guidance of both Kakashi and Anko. What revelations await them, and how will their growth change their destinies? This amazing story is written by juwby. Don't forget to support the author and check out the original work. There's a link to it in the description below. Before we jump into part 4, I want to take a moment to thank you all for your incredible support throughout this series. If you're enjoying this content, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and your support makes all the difference. Alright, let's dive into the thrilling conclusion of What If Team 7 Had a Second Sensei? Here we go with part 4. Sasuke wandered aimlessly through the woods without a destination, consumed by his own thoughts. The one thing he missed from before he was on Team 7 was that he didn't have to process his emotions. He could just ignore them. Now, he was struggling with a feeling that he couldn't believe. Jealousy. Seeing Naruto and his cousin just made Sasuke unwell, and pressure began to build inside his head. He wanted to feel happy, angry, and sad all at once, but it just came out in this general feeling of anxiety and unease. Maybe some deep part of him felt betrayed by the fact that Naruto had a family. For the longest time, he had felt that Naruto was one of the few people to whom he could relate in any way. The sound of crunching leaves launched Sasuke back to reality. He paused and began to examine his surroundings rapidly, preparing for an ambush. He spied nothing on his first survey. He then activated his Sharingan and double-checked the area. About to write off the noise as an animal, Sasuke heard it again. Since he was focused, he was able to locate the source of the noise. Coming from a large fallen tree, the crunching leaves echoed through the trunk. Sasuke palmed a kunai and silently began to approach the fallen log. Sasuke peered into the log, expecting to see an animal or a combatant, but paused in shock upon seeing the figure in the log. Inside was a young girl who had a small pile of leaves in front of her. She was tearing pieces of leaves, crushing them, and putting them into another pile. She was turned away from Sasuke, occupied with her activity. Using the opportunity, Sasuke took the time to examine the girl. She had no markings of a village, her clothing was of poor quality, and she had no equipment other than a dull kunai on the ground near her. He didn't get a look at her face, but her size indicated that she couldn't have been more than 9 or 10. Lost in his analysis, Sasuke had forgotten to hide himself. The girl turned and saw him, yelping in surprise and fear as she crawled deeper into the log, grabbed her kunai, and held it in front of her shakily. Sasuke froze. He had never had to calm anyone down before. He held his hands up, palms forward, trying to show he wasn't a threat. Sasuke then tried to make his voice a little lighter, but it just resulted in his words coming out more awkward. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you. Are you lost?" The girl's grip on the kunai loosened slightly. "Are you in the exams?" The girl shook her head. There was a pause, and silence filled the air. Sasuke cursed that Sakura or Naruto weren't here. They would be much better in this situation. Sasuke continued trying his best to be friendly. "What's your name?" "I'm Sasuke." The girl lowered the kunai fully. "Chino." Her voice was dry and raspy, an indication that she very rarely spoke. "What are you doing here?" "And told me to stay here until he gets back." "Is that your dad?" Chino shook her head, her long blonde hair scraping across the dirt. "N is my owner." The casualness of the statement put Sasuke on edge. Something was very wrong here. This wasn't just some lost girl. "Who's in? And what is he doing here?" Sasuke asked, his voice losing what softness it had. Chino hesitated. Sasuke attempted to force a smile in order to reassure her. He closed his eyes as his face strained to do the action. "It's okay. You can trust me." Chino giggled and pointed, the first childlike expression she displayed in their short interaction. "You look like you have to poo." Sasuke's cheeks turned red as he tried to recompose himself. "Look, it seems like you're in danger. I can help you, but you have to tell me more, especially if this person is a threat to the exam." A smile fell from Chino's face, and she pulled her knees to her chest. Sorry, but I can't tell you. I'll probably get in big trouble. If you're talking about this owner of yours, then I'm sure I can handle him. Chino shook her head. No, you can't. And is strong. Please leave before he returns. I don't want you to get hurt. Sasuke's expression hardened as he reflected on his actions. Why did he care? It wasn't his problem. He could just leave the girl and go back to his team like nothing happened. Sasuke then felt guilt as the disappointed faces of his teachers and teammates filled his mind. Sasuke sighed. They wouldn't leave a girl alone stranded, and he couldn't face them if he did. Sasuke gave Chino a determined look. I'm Sasuke Uchiha, among the last of my clan and a part of Team 7, the strongest genin team in my village. I promise you, on the honor of my clan, that I won't allow harm to come to you. Something in Sasuke's speech seemed to resonate with Chino as she took a few moments to collect herself and began talking. In is a merchant. He buys and sells people with special abilities. He's working with this other guy with a scythe to take kids in this forest with abilities to sell them. Sasuke nodded. The situation seemed a lot more grim than he originally thought. Someone who was confident enough to interfere with such a large-scale event between the villages was no doubt powerful. Where's In now? Before he left me, he said he saw something that interested him, and he went that way, Chino said as she pointed west. Sasuke considered his next move. He could go back and find his team, but in his daze, he had forgotten exactly how far he had traveled and what direction their camp was in. Taking the time to find them could be the difference between life and death for some people. Sasuke looked inward at himself and was content. While his teammates wouldn't be happy with his decision, he had supreme confidence in his ability to fight this in. Sasuke turned to Chino. Thank you. I'll go and stop him. Stay here until I get back. Chino began to scramble out of the log frantically. Wait, take me with you. Why? Because tears began to cascade down Chino's face. I'm really scared and don't want to be alone again. Sasuke was struck by the honesty as he related to the statement the worst thing for a child was to be left alone. He turned away. Chino's face fell as she began to cry. What are you doing? Sasuke crouched down and pointed to his back. Hop on. Thank you. Chino hopped onto Sasuke's back. Make sure you hold on tight. I'll be going fast. Got it. Sasuke jumped into the trees with Chino in tow. Lee! Hinata exclaimed, joy, feeling her seeing a comrade. Kiba rubbed his bruised neck. I'm not complaining, but how the hell did you find us? Lee gave a thumbs up and a huge smile, the sunlight from above glinting off of his teeth. Just a youthful coincidence. If the peanut gallery is done, I'd like to get back to my job bowl cut, and said, annoyance in his voice. Be cautious. He is a very dangerous opponent. We have seen him use fire jutsu, and he is very proficient with his staff that he can extend at will, informed Chino. Lee nodded. Thanks for the info. Please do your best to support me during the fight. The rest of my team should be here soon. Lee dashed forward, sending a kick at In's midsection. In deftly blocked Lee's leg with his staff. Lee continued to attempt to strike In with a barrage of kicks and punches, but he was unable to land a solid hit on In due to In's expert use of his staff to keep his distance and maneuver around Lee's attacks. Kiba and Hinata also attempted to engage during Lee's barrage, but they didn't have Lee's speed, with both of them being knocked away with well-placed strikes from In. Chino sat back and waited, preparing for a moment when they restrained In so he could release his Kikachu upon him. Lee disengaged, sliding backward and stopping in the same stance he started the battle in. As long as In had that staff, he would be at a reach disadvantage, and at his current speed, he wouldn't be able to break through In's defense. Lee then looked toward the sky and yelled an apology. Sorry, Guy Sensei. I can't hold back here. I'm sure you would approve of me taking off my weights for the safety of my friends. Lee bent over and pulled down his orange leg warmers, revealing 2 training weights on each of his ankles, which he began to take off. He then tossed both weights to the side, the impact of both leaving the ground and leaving a sizable hole in the earth. Un's eyes widened behind his glasses at the display. In a flash, Lee dashed forward and plunged his fist into Un's stomach, sending him reeling backward, then put up his staff to block the next strike, but Lee appeared beside him and landed a kick in Un's side. This combo continued, with Lee striking faster and faster, giving In no time to recover. Team 8 watched in awe at the fight, knowing that if they were to interfere now, then they would get in the way. And finally managed to deflect a strike and knock Lee away. He fled backward, getting some distance. He was shaking in rage as he slammed his staff downward, causing it to be impaled into the earth. He was beyond frustrated. Not only had this extended far longer than he thought it would, but it seemed that he would have to take a fight seriously for the first time in years. "You brats don't know who." En's words were interrupted as two kunai came toward him. He immediately noticed the explosive tags attached to them, but he didn't have to move since both projectiles were off target. As the kunai went past him, stopped as they began wrapping around the staff. They were tied together with ninja wire, and looked at his staff and sighed as the tags began to activate. The explosion engulfed the area, consuming En and his staff. Recognizing the technique, Rock Lee turned around and gave a huge thumbs up. That was a youth-filled throw. Tintin. Niji and Tintin landed on the forest floor. "We can't leave you alone for 5 minutes without you getting into trouble," scolded Tintin. "Cousin," Hinata said as she saw Niji. Niji glanced in her direction, scoffed, and turned away. "Great. Even when he's here to help, he can't help but be an asshole," said Kiba. "We are not here to help. We came here for our teammate. Us saving you is just a consequence," Niji said coldly. En's voice came from above. "Man, you guys keep piling on." Everyone looked up to see him standing on a tree branch. En jumped down to the pieces of his destroyed staff. "But playtime is over, and I'm too busy to play ninja with you all." He took off his glasses and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his eyes had undergone a transformation. His sclera turned bright red, his irises dark red, and his pupils turned white horizontal lines, and began to crack his neck. "I don't feel like getting my name and face spread around all the major villages, so I gonna only have to capture maybe 2 or 3 of you. The rest of you will have to die." He held out his palm toward the broken pieces of his staff, and upon closer inspection, it began to dissolve into liquid. The genin were horrified at the fact that it was blood, and lifted his hand, and the blood floated into the air and began to form into a glaive. The blood hardened as En grabbed it out of the air and put the glaive over his shoulder. "Now, which one of you dogs is up first?" Shikamaru stared in awe at the woman in front of him. In his grief, he had completely given up hope of help coming. Shikamaru felt the wire around him loosen as Heiden's scythe fell to the ground around the tree. A red-haired girl came from around the tree. "I can't believe we actually helped them. They're leaf ninja, for God's sake." Another cloud genin walked out into the open. He had white hair and was sucking on a lollipop. "Hate to agree with Karui here, but we should have just kept on moving. There's no telling if they would betray us even after we helped them." Samui continued to stare down Heiden, whose face was filled with shock and rage. "While I have no love for Leaf Ninja, letting a weirdo run around killing people is not something I'm willing to do." Heiden stood up, transforming out of his Reaper form. "Who are you calling a weirdo?" "You? No normal person goes around eating blood," Samui said. Shikamaru stood shell-shocked at the girl's casual banter with the guy who just maimed his teammates. Samui took a moment to analyze the situation. The Leaf Girl was in critical condition. She'd likely die if she wasn't taken back as soon as possible. The other boy, while battered, only had one significant wound that could be closed up if proper first aid was given. Samui began giving orders. "Omoy, there should be proctors patrolling to help escort wounded teams out of the exams. Circle back to where we dispatched the last team. Take the girl and find a proctor, have them escort her back, and ask them to send any assistance. Come back as soon as possible to assist. Karui, grab the boy and get him away from this area. Stabilize him, and return as soon as you can." Despite the duo's reservations, Omoy and Karui nodded in agreement, trusting their leader's judgment. "Got it, but we could probably take this guy down and then deal with the wounded. A lot of unnecessary risk, splitting us up," voiced Omoy. "I jumped in. I'm not going to half-ass it now that I've gotten us involved. If we can save their lives, we will," Samui said, her voice still calm. Heiden began laughing maniacally. "Oh, look like we got a group of everyday heroes here. Talk is cheap. Let's see if you can back it up." Heiden rushed toward Ino with the spear in his hand, aimed at her chest. Samui's eyes widened as she and her teammates attempted to interfere. Just as Heiden was about to pierce Ino's heart, he was stopped in his tracks. Samui saw a length of shadow connecting to Heiden. She turned around to see Shikamaru standing still with his hands in the rat's seal. Shadow possession success. Taking the opportunity, Omio swiftly picked up Ino and began to sprint through the trees to locate the proctors. Karui followed suit as she took Choji and began to take him away from the battle. "Anara, useful. Care to tell me anything you learned?" Shikamaru was shaking, struggling to keep his hold on Haiden. He claims he's immortal, he can use his body as a voodoo doll if he tastes your blood, and he's very proficient with the sai that was wrapped around me, Shikamaru explained, trying to be short with his answers. Samui nodded. She reached into her tool pouch and threw a kunai with deadly precision, piercing the front of Haiden's neck and lodging itself hilt deep. Haiden began to let out gurgles of pain as he choked on blood and the kunai. Shikamaru let go of his techniques, allowing Ichidan to freely move. Haiden began grasping at his neck, desperately picking at the kunai. Maybe he is just insane, commented Shikamaru. Haiden finally got his finger around the loop of the kunai and pulled it out of his throat. He let out deep breaths and began to spit up blood, as some leaked out of his neck. Fuck, that hurts. I may be immortal, but not being able to breathe is still fucking horrible. Haiden complained. How does his body even work? Samui asked out loud, her cool expression gone as her face hardened. She analyzed the threat an immortal man posed. Shikamaru approached and stood next to Samui. I don't know, but I'll find out. That bastard is going to pay. I appreciate the enthusiasm, but please keep your cool. We need to stay alive until my team returns, Samui warned, now slightly regretting her earlier decision. Haiden stood up with his small spear in hand. He gave a smile with his blood-covered teeth and yelled, now give me back my scythe so I can gut you. Niji stood alongside his team and teammate, looking at their strange foe. Niji activated his Byakugan and began to examine In. He had a large amount of chakra, consistent with many elite jonin he had come across. But the most concerning feature was its flow throughout his body. It differed from any chakra Niji had encountered. Chakra usually flowed fast and streaked across like lightning strikes, but En's was slow and congested like a muddy river. The chakra congealed at spots before building up before releasing to the next chakra point. Along with his eyes and ability to control blood at will, it was clear that he belonged to some sort of lost or secret clan with a powerful dojutsu. Niji steeled himself. This opponent shouldn't be taken lightly. He then turned to his teammates and began to give orders. Lee use a hit-and-run strategy and attacks sporadically while I approach to keep him off balance. 10-10 provide covering fire. Niji turned to teammate. You three just try to stay out of our way. Kiba growled, and a trained eye would notice a slight twitch of Shino's eyebrow. Hinata just looked unaffected, accustomed to her cousin's coldness. Niji darted forward, trying to test his opponent. In swung his glaive horizontally in front of him. Niji effortlessly dodged it by jumping back a couple feet. Niji recognized the weakness of In's weapon. While it had reached reach, once he got past it, it couldn't be used for defense. Niji dashed forward again, focusing his vision on In and looking to predict his strike. Then put the glaive low and swung upward in an arc. In a display of impressive acrobatics, Niji leaned forward on one foot and turned underneath the glaive while maintaining his forward momentum. Un's eyes widened at the impossible dodge. Niji took the opportunity to close the distance and attempt to land a strike on In and disable his arms. Niji then saw the staff of the alive begin to morph as spikes began to form the side. Niji attempted to dodge the spikes, but due to his low stance and momentum, he got speared in the shoulder by the small blood spikes and took the chance to close the distance. As he launched himself forward, he outstretched toward Niji's shoulder. Niji noticed that Un's hand was overflowing with the strange congealed chakra. Niji backstepped away, trying to avoid the unknown attack, and managed to only scrap 2 of his fingers across the wound before he was launched back as Niji began to perform 8 trigrams palm rotation. Niji spined rapidly as he expelled chakra and produced a defensive shell around himself. Once Niji stopped his rotation, he closely examined his injury with his Byakugan. The same congealed chakra was now festering in his wound as he began to feel a strange pressure build in his shoulder. With no hesitation, Niji struck his arm with a gentle fist, dispelling the foreign chakra out of his wound. Niji looked at In, a newfound fear forming for his opponent. He had no solid logic or reasoning behind it, but a deep feeling in his gut told him that if he didn't expel the chakra from his wound, he wouldn't be alive right now. Tampering the emotion of shock and anxiety, Niji said, whatever. You don't let him touch your open wounds. He congeals chakra in his hands and tries to put it in your blood. In whistled, impressed that Niji found out one of his most deadly techniques. Man, those eyes are sure something, huh? Niji ignored In and turned toward Team 8 as he barked orders. Attempt to keep him off balance, no matter how strange his powers are. If I can corner him, I can win. Shino's eyebrows twitched at the illogical use of I in Niji's plea for help. Fine, but once this asshole is done, you're next, threatened Kiba, fed up with Niji's ego. Team 8 and Team Guy then began a semi-coordinated blitz on In. Tenten threw a non-stop barrage of various weapons, varying in type and size. Kiba and Hinata began to use similar tactics to Lee, with Kiba and Akumaru attempting claw strikes at the jumbled In and Hinata keeping most of the attention of In strikes. With her Byakugan and flexibility, she could keep her distance and avoid surprise attacks from the glaive. In bemoaned his current situation. While earlier, he could quickly dispatch the Hyuga and Inuzuka, the bowl-cut kid was getting faster and faster in his attacks. Along with the constant projectiles, it made it impossible for him to attack consistently as he put most of his energy into defense. In cursed himself for his incompetence. While it had been almost a decade since he had fought seriously and was outnumbered 1-6, he used to be able to fight twice the number of enemies with ease. He would have to start weeding them down if he was to win in a timely manner. In his musings, In suddenly felt hundreds of tiny bites on the back of his leg as he felt his chakra begin to be drained, slowing his movement. With all the moving parts of the fight, In almost missed Niji's preparing for an attack behind him. Almost. In cut his wrist on the blade of the glaive, and blood began to seep out. Niji got into a stance facing In's back. You're in my field of divination. 8 trigrams 64 palms. Niji got into his set as the first 2 strikes successfully landed. As he went to the next set of his technique, he noticed a barrier of blood began to form around In. Niji, knowing his window of opportunity was limited, began to launch strikes at frantic speed, losing some of their precision but doing damage nonetheless. 4 palms. Niji landed another 4 strikes on In's back. 8 palms, 16 palms. Niji could barely comprehend his actions as he launched his attacks, trying to land all 64 before In's barrier went up. 32 palms. Niji shouted the last set of his form, but as he performed his first strike, his hand was blocked by a shell of blood. Niji clicked his tongue. He wasn't fast enough. The blood shell around In then began to contort. Sensing danger, Niji quickly performed 8 trigrams rotation. The shell exploded, sending fast-flying blood projectiles in all directions. Everyone was able to dodge them, and Niji's technique protected him from the attack. Enough, In yelled, his cool and calm demeanor fading into a rage. In manipulated the blood from his wrist as he began to hit into a whip-like shape, levitating it in the air. Niji and Hinata both noticed the overflowing of the congealed chakra in the blood as they saw and begin to move his hand, and they both yelled in unison. Duck! Pressure whip! The blood expanded outward at an ungodly speed and pressure, slicing through trees and rock, toppling them over, and creating a giant dust cloud on the battlefield. As the dust cleared, everyone was horrified, as time almost seemed to freeze. In was standing over Tenten, whose leg was pinned underneath a tree. He held his glaive over her, prepared to finish her. Tenten, vulnerable as she began failing frantically trying to unpin her leg. Lee's anguished scream pierced the air as he fervently attempted to open the first gate in a desperate bid to save his friend. Team 8 looked on helplessly, knowing they couldn't reach Ten in time. Meanwhile, Niji sprinted forward, his every move infused with determination as he endeavored to halt In his tracks. As In lowered his glaive, a flash of blue appeared in his peripheral. Lightning release. Powerful breath. A bolt of lightning crashed into In, launching him into a tree. Everyone saw Sasuke standing on a branch on one of the few trees spared from the attack, with a blonde girl on his back. His sudden arrival raised everyone's spirits. Rock Lee had tears running down his face as he gave Sasuke a thumbs up. It is truly the power of youth that brought you here, brave Uchiha. I thank you. Lee gave a deep bow in thanks, and Niji gave Sasuke a nod of appreciation, his pride not being able to keep back his gratitude. Sasuke jumped down from the tree. Not that I'm not happy to see you, but why are you here, and who's the kid? Asked Kiba. I suggest we save the questions until after we deal with our enemy, said Shino. Everyone turned their attention to In, who was gingerly getting up from Sasuke's attack. Combined with Niji's earlier strikes and hitting back first into a tree, In's back was on fire, which would no doubt hamper his movements if the fight continued. In looked up, his eyes drawing Chino's attention. Chino hopped off of Sasuke's back and began to run toward in. Sasuke attempted to stop her, but she slipped out of his grasp. "Stop, kid. That's guy dangerous," yelled Kiba. Chino stopped several feet before in and looked up at him, her light blue eyes gazing into his soul. At that moment, In knew that his daughter had finally discovered the truth. In sighed deeply, recalling the events of the last decade of his life and wondering how in the hell he had ended up here. "What a shitty day," and said as he looked up into the sky. He began to contemplate his options, and had always been a man of opportunity. If the chance presented itself, he would take it. That's the whole reason he decided to help a random lunatic. And now, before him, was a golden opportunity to fulfill a promise he had made years ago. Flashback 10 years ago in the Valley of Hell, and held his dying wife in his arms amidst the destruction of their friends and family, while the screams of their newborn filled the air. He placed his hands over the deep wounds on her torso, using his masterful control of their Kekkei Genkai to keep her alive for a few precious moments longer. She raised her hand and touched his cheek. Her black hair sprawled in his lap. "Listen to me. I need you to do something." "What is it, Senri?" "I need you to give away Chino," and immediately felt repulsed by the idea. "There's no way I will give up our daughter." "Shut up and listen to me for once in your life. You dumb man. Please," she pleaded. "But why? Look around us. Look at what we've done to our friends, her family, all to reclaim some lost honor." Tears began to roll down Senri's eyes. She then gripped In's sleeve with her fading strength. "And I'm scared of what will happen to you when I go." Senri looked at In with light blue eyes filled with tears. "Please promise me, and don't let her become you." "What do you mean?" And asked, choking on tears, already knowing what she meant, bitter and hateful toward the world. "I want her to be happy. And please, promise me." I promise. Senri closed her eyes and mouthed, "Thank you," as she fell back into In's arms, and sat on his knees, listening to the echoes of Chino's cries through the cavern. In flashback, a tear rolled down In's face before he wiped it away with his thumb, and closed his eyes. He then began to mold the glaive back into his original staff, and stashed it in his sleeve. When he opened his eyes, they had reverted to normal. He fished for his pink sunglasses and put them back on his face. He looked over to the Jinin. "It's just not worth the effort," and turned to Chino, who was still in shock. "Your mother's name was Senri, and she loved you so much. I'm sorry I failed her and you," and turned around and began to walk away. Chino stood there shell-shocked as she watched In's back. Why? Her words came out as a whisper, but she then raised her voice as the question echoed through the trees. "Why?" In paused his leave for a moment, but he continued walking away. Chino fell to her knees and began to cry, repeating her question repeatedly in murmurs. Kiba, stunned by the scene, asked, "Are we just going to let him go?" Chino nodded. It appears he had no more intention to fight. If we were to engage him further, it would be foolish. Niji and Lee rushed to Tintin to free her leg. Sasuke walked toward Chino, who was bawling her eyes out. Knowing from experience that words do not usually help, he sat beside her, staying silent. After several minutes, Chino calmed down. "Do you need to talk?" Chino shook her head. "Not right now." "Okay, I'll be back. I need to talk to the others." Sasuke stood up and began walking toward Team Guy and Team 8, who were gathered to evaluate any wounds and recover from the experience. Tintin approached Sasuke. "Thank you for saving my life. I probably would have been a goner if you didn't show up." "Don't mention it." Not exactly knowing how to accept the gratitude, Lee stepped forward and held his hand out to Sasuke. "I owe you much more than I can give now for saving my teammate when I could not. Anytime you need me, just call the heavens, and I will come to assist you." Sasuke took Lee's hand, visibly confused by his offer. Tintin rolled her eyes. "To translate, this goof means that if you are ever in a pinch, you can count on us." "That goes for us too," voiced Kiba. "And by the way, who's the girl?" Sasuke then explained the events before his arrival to everyone. "How awful to leave a child alone in a place like this," said Hinata. "What will you do about her?" asked Tintin. Sasuke looked over to Chino. "I'll take her back to my team and protect her until we can hand her over to some proctors." As they discussed the accounts over the next several minutes, Team 8 made their leave. Just before Team Guy left, Niji made a surprising remark to Sasuke. "Perhaps my initial judgment of you was ill-informed." Sasuke couldn't help but smirk and responded, That's a weird way of saying thank you. Niji scoffed and then turned to his teammates, saying, "Let's leave. We've wasted enough time here already." With that, Team Guy departed. Sasuke then walked in front of Chino and crouched down, offering his back for her to climb on. "You're about to meet my team. I think you'll like them," he said as he and Chino began to leave the area. Samui and Shikamaru quickly discussed a plan of action. He may be immortal, but he is still beholden to his body. Samui nodded. "So knees, heels, joints, any point that could limit mobility. How long could you do your shadow technique? Maybe 2 to 3 more times. But he probably won't be held longer than a few seconds. Plus, I have an ace up my sleeve. Do you mind telling me?" Shikamaru quickly whispered something to Samui, and a small smile came across her face. "Understood. I'll engage him directly, stay in the back, and provide support when needed." Haiden charged wildly at Samui and Shikamaru. "Stop talking." Samui came face to face with her opponent and drew her tanto from its sheath. As the two prepared to clash, she launched a series of rapid, graceful strikes aimed at severing tendons in Haiden's arms. Despite wielding a less-than-ideal weapon, Haiden showcased remarkable skill in Kenjutsu, effortlessly parrying each of her attacks. Shikamaru stayed back as he analyzed Haiden's movements and searched for an opportune time for his shadow possession. This area was perfect, as the shadows from the trees provided him great versatility with his jutsu. Seeing an opening, Shikamaru sped his shadow forward. Haiden, spotting it, began to jump away, but Samui predicted his dodge and swiftly pursued him. She managed to land a strike, leaving a long, deep gash across Haiden's bicep. Shikamaru retracted his shadow and began to relocate to get a better angle. Haiden dashed toward Shikamaru, but his advance was quickly interrupted as Samui landed a devastating slash to the back of Haiden's knee, toppling him. Haiden looked at Samui with rage, whose, despite her expression not changing, had an aura of smugness. "You should focus on the opponent in front of you." Haiden began to get frustrated. If only he had his scythe, these two would already be minced meat. A devilish idea then popped into Haiden's head as he got up and charged at Samui. She performed a piercing thrust with her tanto, expecting it to be blocked, but Haiden put his forearm in and stabbed himself on the blade. Samui's eyes grew wide in shock. Haiden then took his other arm and landed a strike across Samui's face, making her let go of her blade and fall away. Haiden took the chance to begin sprinting to his weapon. He pulled out Samui's tanto and threw it away off into the woods. Shikamaru, seeing this, began to expand his shadow, trying to catch Haiden before he could reach his weapon. As Haiden was only a few feet away from his scythe, he froze as his shadow became attached to Shikamaru's. Samui recovered and saw Shikamaru's control was already fading as Haiden was beginning to regain his body. She looked around for her tanto but didn't immediately spot it in the area. She also realized she couldn't cover the distance between her and Haiden before he broke free. Knowing that this may be the last time they would have him vulnerable, Samui pulled out a kunai and began to perform a technique. She got into a low sprinter stance and began to channel a massive amount of lightning chakra throughout her body. Lightning release, flow sprint. With a powerful surge of chakra rushing through her legs, Samui moved forward like a bolt of lightning, scorching the grass behind her. Meanwhile, as Haiden broke free from Shikamaru's hold, he suddenly felt a sharp slice in his right heel, followed by an intense surge of thousands of volts of lightning coursing through his entire body, causing him to tense up and collapse to the ground. Shikamaru stood awestruck at Samui's technique. He followed the trail she left behind. She went a good 20 feet past Haiden and was still crouched, but it was clear she was not 100%. She was breathing heavily and was shaking, a sign she was dangerously low on chakra, the signs he knew because he was going through the same symptoms currently. "Between breaths," Samui said. I missed." After the electricity passed through his system, Haiden stood up and examined his right heel. The cut was significant, but he could still move, if barely. If it had been any deeper, he probably would have lost his foot. Haiden began laughing maniacally as he limped toward his scythe and picked it up. Haiden didn't notice the smug expression on Samui's and Shikamaru's faces when he picked up the weapon, but he did notice the glowing explosive tags. Haiden frantically threw the weapon, but he was still caught in the explosion. Samui and Shikamaru waited with bated breath to see the state of their foe, and to their dismay, Haiden, though injured, was still standing. His right took most of the damage, with his right arm having severe burns across it. He also had a burn scar on the side of his face. The scythe took most of the damage. While still intact, the 3 main blades were bent from the heat, with the wire portion of the weapon completely broken. Haydn could almost cry at the state of his beloved scythe. He screamed in rage as he pointed the mangled weapon at Shikamaru and Samui. "You too will pay in blood for this, Lord Jashin will." Haydn interrupted himself as he felt the movement of the air above. He turned to see Karui coming down with her blade to decapitate him. At the last moment, he managed to avoid decapitation, but due to the angle Karui struck, she was still able to take a limb as she sliced through his left arm. Haydn screamed in pain and swung his scythe wildly. Karui rolled away and got into a defensive stance. Haydn looked at the stump, which was now his left arm. He pointed his stump at Karui. "Really? Are you kidding me?" Karui was confused by the casualness Haydn was approaching, losing a limb. Haydn picked up his arm off the ground and stowed it under his shoulder. He then remembered that it would only be a matter of time before more showed up, and while only a few minutes ago it wouldn't have been a problem, his scythe was broken and he was missing an arm. Haydn gritted his teeth, accepting his defeat. "I underestimate you all, but I promise you, one day, you will see the glory of Jashin and become his sacrifice." Haydn then retreated from the area. "Hey!" Karui shouted as she almost prepared to go after him. "Don't bother," Samui said as she walked over, clearly exhausted. Shikamaru, instead of walking over, just fell down flat on his butt and leaned against a tree. "Where's Choji?" "He's a few minutes away. I patched up his worst wounds, and he was conscious the last time I saw him," said Karui. Shikamaru leaned further back into the tree. "That's good news. Thank you." Several minutes later, Omio arrived with 5 proctors. 2 immediately went to secure Choji and escort him back. The other 3 took testimony about Haydn and the fight. Since both his teammates were unable to continue, we would not be able to pass the exam. So he decided to head back with the proctors. Before he left, he walked over to Samui, who was taking a rest. "Hey, Nara," Samui greeted. "Shikamaru. My name is Shikamaru." "Shikamaru, well, I'm Samui. Odd to fight side by side but not know each other's name," Samui mused. "Look, I don't know why you helped us, but you saved my 2 best friends. I can't thank you and your team enough." Shikamaru got down on the ground and bowed. Tears fell onto the dirt below him. "Thank you so much. Get up, Nara. You were just as much a part in saving your friends as we were." Shikamaru shook his head. "I doubt that they trusted me, and I let them get hurt. From your testimony, it sounds like your plan succeeded. You went toward the center of the forest to find backup, and you found us, and the 3 of you survived. Leadership is a thing. And one of the lines you have to walk is knowing the difference in blame and accountability." "What's the difference?" "Blame would you saying it's your fault your team ran into that maniac. But accountability is you saying you weren't strong enough to stop him without help. It's about focusing on what you can control. You can't choose your obstacles, but you can choose how prepared you are to face them." Samui then got up and began to make her way to her team. "If it weren't for you, I doubt I would have survived the fight. For that, I thank you. Goodbye, Nara." As she walked away, Shikamaru began searching through his pouch. "Wait." Samui turned around. Shikamaru threw a pouch at her, and when she opened it, she had Team 10's coins. "Consider that payment for your help." Samui smiled lightly. "You know what? You're pretty cool, Nara." Sasuke recognized the familiar landmarks, indicating he was close to their camp. He dropped to the forest floor and turned around to ask Chino, "Do you want to get down?" Chino shook her head and said, "No." Sasuke shrugged and continued walking to camp. He didn't mind, as she was so light. It was no inconvenience to carry her. As Sasuke entered the camp, he was met by the bright smiles of his teammates. "Sasuke, are you okay?" Sakura asked, concerned about the length of time Sasuke was gone. Naruto was sitting by the fire next to Karen. "Yeah, man. We were about to go looking for you." "Wait, what's that on your back?" Chino peeked around Sasuke's shoulder and waved shyly. Sasuke sighed. "It's a long story." After the exams began, the jonin of each village were told that if they would like, they could wait in the Star Lounge, a popular spot in the city that had been rented out for the next few days, just for ninjas. They were also told that by staying at or near the lounge would allow them to get updates on the status of their teams. Eager to see their team progress, the Anko, Kakashi, Kunoichi, Asuma, and Guy took up the offer and made their way to the lounge for the day. The 2-story building was grand and impressive. As they walked in, it offered a range of entertainment with its pool, darts, welcoming bar, and ambient piano music. The group of 5 went upstairs to see a smaller bar with an arrangement of seats. The ceiling of the bar was adorned with a large mural of stars. They took residence in a booth upstairs, which had a clear view of the whole lounge and was in close proximity to the bar. During the day, everyone except Guy did some light drinking. Guy was enjoying his new homemade protein shake, which caused fewer stomach cramps. They had been there all day, and the sun was beginning to set. The second exam was scheduled to continue until the morning of the third day. Since there was no live update system like in the previous exams, Jonin were encouraged to stay nearby to receive updates about their team's disqualification status. Asuma let out a big yawn and glanced at the clock on the wall. What time should we start heading back? It's getting late. We should probably stay for about another hour or so. You never know when something may happen, said Kakashi. I don't know. It's probably a good sign that we haven't heard anything yet. It means they're still in this thing, said Kurenai hopeful. As if on cue, a man hurried up the stairs and quickly scanned the second floor. When he spotted their group, he hastened toward their table and came to a stop. They held their breath, seeing this happen multiple times throughout the day. Once a team's disqualification was confirmed, the Jonin would be informed directly if they were in the lounge. They all waited in anticipation of their team's status. The man spoke. Excuse me, I'm looking for an Asuma Sarutobi. Damn! Asuma exclaimed as he handed a handful of Ryo to a smug Anko. It's all right, Asuma. I believe your students fought with all their youthful vigor, exclaimed Guy. Asuma sighed and looked over at the man. So they got eliminated. Where are they at? I'll probably take them out to eat. They can't cost me any more money today. The man became visibly more nervous as his following words got caught in his throat. Sensing something wrong, Asuma immediately straightened his posture, and his casual tone disappeared. What happened? We don't know all the details yet, but an unknown ninja of considerable strength infiltrated the exams and started to take out participants. We have confirmed that he killed 6 genin and 2 proctors. He had an encounter with your team, but retreated shortly after. 2 of your students were heavily injured. All 3 are at the hospital. Where is the hospital? Asked Asuma, his voice betraying his concern. It's not far from here. If you keep on going down this street, you'll see it. It's one of the largest buildings here. Asuma stood and turned to the rest of the table. Sorry, guys, but I have to go. You guys can stay if you want. No way. I'm coming with you, Kurenai declared, her determination clear in her voice. If they had a hard-fought battle, we should go and raise their spirits, said Guy. Asuma then turned to Anko and Kakashi. You guys coming too? Of course, responded Kakashi. If it was one of ours, you would go, said Anko. Asuma nodded and turned toward the man. Thank you for telling me. I'll go see them immediately. The 5 of them exited and made their way to the hospital. They entered the hospital only a few minutes later. Asuma approached the front desk. Do you know where Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, and Choji Akimichi are located? They should have returned from the exams recently, Asuma asked. The receptionist had an immediate look of recognition on her face. Yes, 2 of them needed to be operated on immediately. The other one only had a mild case of chakra exhaustion. He's in waiting room C. If you wait there with him, you all should get updates as soon as a doctor is able, she said in a professional tone. Thank you. She then gave directions as the group reached the waiting room. Upon entering the waiting room, they saw Shikamaru sitting in a chair. He was looking down at the floor, his chin resting on his hand, deep in thought. Asuma whispered to the others, I got this, as he walked over and sat next to Shikamaru. Despite Asuma's presence, Shikamaru showed no sign of acknowledgement. The others watched the strange display with interest, but they respected Asuma's words and stayed back on the other side of the waiting room. After several minutes of silence, Shikamaru spoke without looking up. I failed them. I mean, come on. They're fighting for their lives while I'm just a little tired. All because they followed my lead. What happened? Tell me everything you can remember. Shikamaru then recounted their encounter with Haiden, leaving out no details. The recounting of Haiden's strange ability took all the Jonin by surprise, as did the interference by the Cloud team. All I can say, kid, is that you did a good job, Asuma said. Shikamaru looked up from the ground for the first time and gave him a puzzled look. What do you mean they're hurt because of me? Based on what you described, you faced off against an A-rank, possibly S-rank enemy in a completely unexpected situation. Not only did you keep your teammates alive, but you also managed to prevent the enemy from harming any more people, Asuma explained, providing an objective assessment of the situation. As Shikamaru replayed the scene of being bound and helpless in his mind, tears of frustration began to well up in the corners of his eyes. I didn't do shit if Samui and her team hadn't shown up, but they did, and you are alive because of it. You encountered a ninja that would give all of us in this room a hell of a lot of trouble, and your quick thinking put you in a position to be saved. Asuma put a firm hand on Shikamaru's shoulder. Listen, I can't make you feel less guilty, but I promise you that as soon as those two wake up and make it out of this, they won't be anything but thank you and smiles. They're alive, Shikamaru. Don't grieve something that didn't happen, but I wasn't strong enough. I couldn't keep them safe, no matter what plan I had. It didn't matter because I couldn't do anything when it came down to it. The last time I checked, you weren't done growing. None of you are. This is just as much on me as it is on you. I could have prepared you all better, but that doesn't matter now. As soon as you three are out of the hospital, I'm going to make sure the next time something like this happens, you three will be ready. Shikamaru nodded solemnly. Okay. A few moments later, a doctor entered the waiting room, and his gaze immediately fixated on Asuma and Shikamaru. Are you the sense and teammate of Ino and Choji? Asuma nodded. Yes, we are. Okay. If you would follow me, I can give you details on their condition. Asuma waved his hand. No need. Everyone here is a friend and of the Leaf. Very well. The doctor then closed the door to the waiting room to avoid any nearby eavesdroppers and then began. Choji's treatment was really simple. He had a deep stab wound that luckily didn't pierce any organs. Additionally, he had multiple bruises around his body, and many of his ribs were broken or fractured as well. Thanks to the first aid he received before he got here, he didn't lose a significant amount of blood. We sealed up the wound with medical ninjutsu, and most of the bruises were already beginning to fade as well. As for his ribs, we began a healing process to start repairing them. As long as he receives regular treatment and limits his movement, he should be close to fully healthy in a few weeks. A feeling of relief filled the room as they heard about Choji's condition. What about Ino? Asked Asuma. The doctor's face tensed slightly before he spoke. Mrs. Yamanaka's status is a lot more severe. Her condition has improved, but she's not out of the fire yet. She arrived with a severe concussion and a broken arm, though her worst injuries were to her legs. Her right leg was nearly bisected, and her left took significant damage as well. It was initially thought that she would need to amputate her right leg, but we thankfully avoided that outcome. She's stabilized, but she will be monitored closely over the course of the next few days. The mood of the room dampened at hearing Ino's state. Sorry, I could not deliver better news. No, it's okay. Can we visit them now? Asked Asuma, his tone somber. Sadly, no. The treatment for broken bones is a long and delicate process for medical ninjutsu, and both of them are still in amidst it, though I can tell you we will most likely have them both in assigned rooms by the morning. I understand. Thank you for your time. No problem. The doctor then opened the door and made his leave. As he did, Anko's thoughts went toward her students. Despite how capable she knew they were, she could only hope for their safety. At Team 7's camp, Chino had fallen asleep, exhausted from the day's emotional strain. Sasuke had just given a brief summary of the day's events, including finding Chino and assisting the other Konoha teams in repelling it. Karen adjusted her glasses. While it may not be my place, it would have been the best course of action to come and get Naruto, considering he is most likely among the strongest in your village. Sasuke's eyebrows rose. Sakura groaned audibly. Please, Karen, don't take everything Naruto says at face value. Sakura turned to Sasuke. Naruto likes to exaggerate, right? Sasuke? Back me up. Naruto is strong, but he's probably overstating his accomplishments, Sasuke replied. Naruto stopped eating a ration and said, don't listen to them. They're just jealous of my awesomeness. Karen nodded in agreement. That makes sense. My mother told me that others were often jealous of the success of Uzumaki's. Ain't that right? Naruto said as he held out his hand for a fist bump. Karen obliged as they bumped fists and smiled. Sasuke rolled his eyes, and Sakura sighed deeply. Sakura then asked a question on her mind. So, Karen, are you sure you are okay? I mean, a lot happened today. Karen's mood visibly flattened. I'm sorry. It's just that I still feel terrible we didn't arrive in time to save your friends, Sakura apologized. Karen shook her head. Don't worry. I understand. And I still feel terrible about my teammates. But if I'm being honest, these last few hours since you rescued me have been the happiest I've been in years. Her statement shocked the three of them. Karen continued, my team was mean to me, yelling a lot and never taking me seriously. They only kept me around because of my abilities. Abilities? Naruto questioned. Karen nodded. I was born with the innate ability to sense chakra. Like a dojutsu? Questioned Sasuke. No, it's like, if I close my eyes and focus, I can see the world in a different view. I can feel people's emotions and can see their chakra. Naruto closed his eyes and began humming. What are you doing? I'm trying to do the eye thingy. It's not something you can turn off. I have just always been able to do it. Naruto opened his eyes and pouted. That's lame. Trust me, it's not as cool as it sounds. I try not to use it a lot, especially around a lot of people. It's so easy to get overwhelmed, especially if you're surrounded by negativity. What's your other ability? Asked Sakura. People of Uzumaki descent have very strong life forces. We rarely get sick, and we age slower as a result. There's a rare trait that my mother passed down to me, whereby consuming our blood rapidly heals wounds, even lethal ones. Whoa, could I do that? I doubt it. My mother told me it was an exceedingly rare trait among the clan. Naruto crossed his arms. Dang, how come I didn't get any cool clan abilities? It's more of a curse to me. I wish I didn't have it. Karen pulled up her right sleeve, revealing bite marks up the length of her arm. Naruto's eyes widened, and Sakura gasped. The transfer of life force can only happen if someone consumes my blood. If it's only done once or twice a day, then there aren't any adverse effects, but constant use and draining can shorten your lifespan drastically. Karen's voice grew more heavy. My father passed away when I was a baby, and my mother had nowhere to go. She sought refuge in the village hidden in the grass and offered her healing ability as payment for us staying there. My mother, over the years, got weaker and weaker from overuse of her ability to where she eventually passed away when I was 7. After she passed, I was deemed too valuable just to heal thanks to my sensory ability, so they would often send me out on missions when I was young for recon and healing. Tears began to run down Karen's face. For years, I was just a tool. I thought that when I became a ninja, I would matter. They would care about me and not just what I could do. But all I ever was a first aid kit or a pair of binoculars, just another tool in the pouch. It didn't matter if I was hurt or felt bad or didn't want to. I had to save lives, stop others from being in pain, and clear up fucking colds. I would just heal right up like it never happened. Karen was embraced by Naruto, tears still streaming down her face. I promise I won't let anyone hurt you again. Karen returned the hug and began sobbing into Naruto's shoulder. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere changed. The honest conversation had brought the members of Team 7 and Karen closer. They decided on the schedule for night watches among Team 7 as the group drifted off to sleep, ready for the next day. Hiruzen groaned as he shuffled through the halls of the daimyo's manor. He had been awakened from one of his rare naps to be informed that the leaders of each village needed to have an emergency meeting. As he entered the daimyo's office, he was escorted by 5-leaf Anbu. The space was very large, with multiple couches and other seating areas. He spotted the Kage, noting he was the last to arrive. A lying down on his side on an oversized couch spoke as Hiruzen entered. Looks like old age is finally catching up with you. Late to an emergency meeting? Perhaps it is, but I'm personally under the philosophy that one is never too young or old to nap, especially with how busy our positions are. I also don't like what you're applying. Are you saying age has something to do with tardiness? The daimyo spoke. Sorry to interrupt, but now that you're here, we have some disturbing news about the exams. Speak, Raza said, his iron-cold tone sending chills down the man's spine. Well, according to reports, outside ninjas apparently infiltrated the exam area and began slaughtering teams. How the hell did this happen? A shouted. Sitting upright from his casual position, Konoha was supposed to ensure the exam was safe. I hope this isn't a ploy or a scheme, Inoki said as he narrowed his eyes toward Hiruzen. While we had our ninjas proctoring the exam, we left the scouting to the former ninja of Yugakure, who knew the area well. They did several checks and reported back that nothing was wrong, responded Hiruzen as he turned his gaze to the daimyo. Over the next few hours, the village leaders discussed Ain's and Heiden's encounters and the implications for the exams. Should we end the second stage early? There should be no need. It should end by mid-afternoon tomorrow, explained the daimyo. Very well, but we will continue to have further discussion, especially if the Chinoki clan is involved. Voiced a thank you all for your time. I'm again extremely sorry for the inconvenience, said the daimyo as he dismissed the meeting. After a chaotic first day, Team 7 found the start of the second day of the exam very uneventful. Even with the addition of Karen and Chino, there was no threat of them getting caught in the crossfire as there were significantly fewer squads. Many teams were eliminated on the first day due to the overcrowding of the exam area, combined with the massive skill disparity, with the top teams easily eliminating dozens of teams by themselves. Just as Team 7 was settling down to rest and strategize, a shrill alarm pierced the air, shattering the tranquility of the forest. The unexpected interruption left the group on edge, their plans abruptly put on hold. Naruto was the first to speak. "What's that noise?" "I have no idea," replied Sakura. The sound of movement put everyone on edge as they prepared to fight, but their guards went down as soon as a proctor came into view as they landed on a branch nearby. The proctor addressed them. "An order has come down, and the second stage will end earlier due to outside interference. Please report back to the hilltop so the top 7 teams can be decided. Do not engage with opposing squads on your way back, or you will be disqualified." The proctor then noticed that Team 7 had 2 extra people with them. "Can I ask why you have an opponent and a child with you?" Sakura quickly spoke up. "This is Karen. We saved her from another team after her squad mates were killed." Sasuke then gestured to Chino, who was on his back. "I found her alone in the woods. She was with a ninja who attacked some of the other teams from Konoha." "Interesting. I will escort you all back personally. However, I will need to take the girl back to Center Spring as soon as we arrive. Her testimony will be important for us in determining what happened here." The proctor then looked towards Karen. "Once you arrive, you'll be taken to your Jonin Sensei to report the deaths of your squad mates." "I'm sorry for your loss." Karen gave a regretful look to the ground. "Thank you." They followed the proctor back to the starting area. Upon arrival, the only team of note they noticed was absent was Team 10. The proctor turned towards Sasuke and Chino. "If you don't mind, I must take her away now." Sasuke obliged and let Chino off of his back. Not resisting, Chino walked over to the proctor, but as she almost reached them, she turned around and looked at Sasuke. "Will we see each other again?" Sasuke hesitated. Truthfully, he had no idea if he would. Depending on the situation, they might never see each other again. Still, despite that, Sasuke could not help but try to reassure Chino, who was looking noticeably anxious as she walked away. "Yeah, sure," Sasuke said, trying to sound nonchalant. Chino smiled lightly, grabbed the proctor's hand, and began their way back to the city. Karen, upon seeing Chino depart, knew it was time to take her leave as well. She sighed. "Well, I guess I better go find my sensei, but don't worry. I'm going to make sure I see you guys again." "Really? What are you going to do?" Karen gave a cheeky smile. "Oh, don't worry. You'll find out soon." She then embraced Naruto tightly. "Thank you again, all of you. I promise I'll make it up to you someday." "Anytime, cousin." Karen let go of the hug and started to walk away, waving back at Team 7 as she left. "Don't worry. We'll meet up again," Naruto yelled after her. "Definitely. Stay safe, Naruto." Seeing that most teams had arrived, Gunma began to yell instructions at the participants. "Okay, everyone. In front of the small office, there will be several tables. One member of each team should approach one of these tables and hand the proctor your coins so we can decide on the finalists." The atmosphere in the clearing was tense as the proctors collected the coins from each team, meticulously counting them individually. The team members observed in silence, their expressions betraying a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The clinking sound of the coins being stacked echoed through the clearing. As the last coins were counted, each of the proctors grabbed their sheets and delivered them to the small office, where the results would be tallied. After several minutes, Gunma emerged from the office, ready to announce the 7 squads that would participate in the final round. Jinin exchanged nervous glances. Their hopes hinged on the outcome. "I will announce the teams from 1st to 7th, starting with 1st place from Suna, Gaara, Kankuro, and Temari. 2nd place from the Cloud, Samui, Omoi, and Karui. 3rd place coming from Konoha Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruto. 4th place from IWA, Kuratsuchi, Suzumabachi, and Ibuki. 5th place from Konoha Niji, Tintin, Rock Lee. 6th place from Takigakure Fu, Kagon, and Yoro. And finally, in 7th place, from Konoha Hinata, Kiba, and Shino. If the finalists follow me, I will escort you back to the square to announce the final stage." The atmosphere crackled with anticipation as Gunma led the top 7 teams back to the square. The square was filled with media, photographers, and ninjas, all eager to witness the matchups for the final exam. The reporters jostled for position, their cameras clicking and flashing as they captured the arrival of the top competitors. They arrived back at the same square where the exams were first announced. The same lineup of all the village leaders was on stage, with the daimyo and front mic ready in hand. The only major difference was that there was now a large screen above that had 3 empty brackets yet to be filled. The 7 teams stood in the square that once housed hundreds of genin just a day earlier. The daimyo stepped up and spoke. "Congratulations to all of you for making it to the 3rd and final stage of the Chunin exams. You should all be proud of this achievement." Cheers rang out after the daimyo's words. After the daimyo continued, "As is tradition, the final round will be a tournament-style free-for-all. But due to the large number of participants, we have decided to break the final round into 3 brackets. 1 member of each team will be put in each bracket. Additionally, 1 person from the top 3 teams from the second stage will get a bye in the first round of their bracket. Now, without further ado, let's reveal the brackets for the final round." The screen above flashed, and suddenly, all 3 brackets became filled. Bracket 1. Ibuki v. Esquiba. Tenten vs. Omio. Fu vs. Naruto. Gaara first round bye. Bracket 2. Kagon vs. Kuratsugi. Niji vs. Temari. Hinata vs. Karui. Sasuke first round bye. Bracket 3. Yoro vs. Sakura. Kankuro vs. Rock Lee. Suzumabachi vs. Shino. Samui first round bye. Now, you all have a month to prepare, and I have no doubt that by the time the month passes, all of you will be known for participating in the great Chunin exams in history. After the announcement ceremony ended, Anko and Kakashi tracked down their team. Due to the chaos and buzz around the ceremony, it took around half an hour for them to find some privacy on a nearby roof. "Now, we must discuss the next step for you 3. There won't be time to celebrate. The final tournament will not only be the hardest part, but depending on what you 3 do, it will be the sole decider of whether you will get promoted," informed Kakashi. The 3 nodded, their readiness for the final stage evident in their determined expressions. "By the end of tomorrow, we want the 3 of you to decide what areas you want to train in, whether you are enhancing your previous skills or picking up new ones. Also, you won't be limited to what we can teach you. If we have to, we have other talented instructors who can help you," said Anko. "Also, you should remember that you guys will not fight as a team. The 3 of you should take a long look at your weaknesses and strengths, and don't be afraid to ask us if you need a little guidance. Now, there's still daylight, let's celebrate. You guys earned it." As the evening sun began to set, Kakashi and Anko led Team 7 through the city's bustling streets, celebrating their successful passing of the second stage of the Chunin exams. The team was in high spirits, their faces still flushed with the excitement of their recent accomplishments. As evening came, Kakashi looked up into the sky and said, "I think it's time we start heading back. You 3 will have to get up early tomorrow. You guys can go ahead. I spotted a bookstore a few blocks back and wanted to check it out," said Anko. "I'll go with you," said Naruto. "Really?" Anko said confused. "Yeah, I want to check out books and stuff." Anko raised an eyebrow, but she turned and beckoned Naruto with her hand. "Okay, but try to be careful with the books." After they had gotten a fair distance away from the rest of the team, Anko spoke. "So what is that you wanted to talk about?" Naruto looked up at Anko, slightly surprised. "How did you know?" "I knew as soon as you said you wanted to go to a bookstore." Anko then led Naruto to the side and sat on a bench. Naruto followed, sat next to her, and began talking. "Well, there is some stuff I need to talk to you about. It's about what happened during the exams with Karen, the girl you guys recused. Yeah, it turns out she was an Uzumaki, and she told me about our clan." Naruto suddenly jumped up and put both arms on Anko's shoulders. "I have a clan. Can you believe it? Do you know who the Uzumaki are?" Naruto's jumbled questions caught Anko off guard, but then she gave a confused look. "Wait, you're an Uzumaki, like by blood?" "Yeah, duh. Why would I have the Uzumaki name if I wasn't in Uzumaki?" questioned Naruto. "I just thought you were given the name by the village. The orphanage gives last names to kids who aren't adopted. That's how I got mine. I assumed they gave you the name to honor the clan," explained Anko. "Do you know a lot about the Uzumaki?" asked Naruto. Anko nodded. "Of course, the subject of the Uzumaki is a hard one to study, Despite them having a close relationship with our village, literature from Yuzushiogakure is extremely rare. They were ultra-protective of all of their texts. Anko then paused. Also, how do you know if you're even blood-related? Did you confirm it somehow? Anko said, thinking out loud, her analytical mind fueling her words. Naruto felt dread and doubt surged as he realized he didn't know. Karen had just heard their last name and assumed he was Uzumaki by blood. Before he could be consumed by the feeling, Naruto shook his head and looked up at Anko with determined eyes. I know I am an Uzumaki. There's no doubt that I'm a Uzumaki. I know it, and I feel it in my soul. Anko gave a tooth-filled smile at Naruto's resolve. Well, if you say so, I believe you. It's not like you wouldn't fit the bill with some of your traits: fast healing, large chakra pool, and ridiculous vitality, all hallmarks of an Uzumaki. But I just assumed that it was just because of your fuzzy little friend, Anko said as she poked Naruto's stomach. Naruto slapped Anko's hand away and asked a question. Do you know anyone in the village that could be related to me? Anko thought momentarily as she reached into her memory until she remembered a conversation from years prior between her and Hiruzen over tea. The only Uzumaki I know of from recent memory is a Kushina Uzumaki, but I've never seen or met her. The only reason I even know the name is because Gramps brought up the name in passing. Naruto looked down and tightened his fists as tears began to run down his face. Anko panicked slightly and got up and squatted down in front of Naruto. Whoa, did I say something wrong? Naruto looked up, his eyes full of tears. I asked him many times if he knew who my parents were, and he told me every time he didn't or to not worry about it. But he knew the whole time, and he lied to me repeatedly. I asked him every time I saw him. Anko's expression of worry turned into a simmering anger. While she loved Hiruzen like family, everything surrounding how he dealt with Naruto frustrated her. While she disagreed, she could understand why he hid Naruto's status as a Jinchuriki. But to hide not only his heritage, but also his family made all the hidden rage she had for the man come forth. Anko stood and started walking in a different direction. She then turned around and said, "Come on. I know where that bastard is staying. He's going to answer some questions tonight," Anko said through clenched teeth. Anko led Naruto to the hotel where Hiruzen was staying. It was on the city's main street. Anko barged into the main lobby, getting strange glances from the guests and employees. She went up to the front desk and addressed the receptionist with a firm tone. "I'm here to see the Hokage. Both of us should be on the list for allowed visitors. Anko Mitarashi and Naruto Uzumaki," Anko declared, her voice carrying a sense of urgency. The receptionist was caught off guard but quickly picked up a folder and scanned through the contents. She then looked up and said, "Okay, you may head down the hall, and an Anbu should be there to escort you to the penthouse." On the way up, Naruto turned to Anko and asked, "Hey, could you just let me talk to him? Why do I need to lay into the bastard? Please sit. I need him to tell me the truth. I don't want anyone else forcing him to do it," urged Naruto. Anko sighed. "Fine, but he's mine after." As they got to the suite, two Anbu stood outside the door. They nodded and allowed Anko and Naruto to enter the room. Hiruzen was sitting on a couch and sipping tea. Three other Anbu were in the room, one of whom Anko recognized as Yugao. "We need to talk. It has to do with Naruto." Hiruzen nodded and waved the Anbu away. Yugao gave Anko a subtle nod as she exited. Once they were alone, Hiruzen looked at Anko and asked, "So, was there another issue with Naruto losing control of the fox in the exam? Do you know who my parents are?" Naruto asked, his voice soft in tone. Hiruzen, not expecting the question, was taken aback. "Oh well, I already told you before." "Stop lying. I already know. And I'm a Uzumaki? Well, it's just given my name, I would have believed that if I didn't meet my cousin. Cousin? I saved her. Her name is Karen Uzumaki." Silence overtook the room. Anko stewed in anger as she glared at Hiruzen, her respect for him fading every moment he held onto his lies. "Please, Gramps, just tell me," Naruto begged. Hiruzen reasoned that his powerful voice was being replaced by that of an unsure old man. "Naruto, I can't." Anger flowed through Naruto as he raised his voice. "Why can't you tell me?" "Because," Hiruzen trailed off. "Because what?" "For your safety." Hiruzen's voice was shaky, showing his lack of confidence in his answer. Anko scoffed but stifled her words as she kept her promise to Naruto. "Please, I need to know," Naruto begged again. Hiruzen let out a deep sigh as he leaned back into the couch, his lack of energy and the position making him look many years older. He then sat up and looked Naruto square in the eyes. "Naruto, I've done nothing but make excuses and lie to you for a lot of your life. Out of a post hoc justification of my cowardice, I'm going to tell you the truth, the whole truth, about your parents and the fox and its history with your clan and the village, and after I tell you you choose to not speak with me again, I will accept that." Naruto stood up straight and focused on Hiruzen's following words more than he had anything in his life. "The truth is that you are not the first to carry your burden years ago. After the first Hokage detained the nine-tailed fox after his battle with Madara, his wife sealed the fox within herself. This woman was Mito Uzumaki. She wasn't directly related to you, but her marriage to the first Hokage unified the alliance we had between Uzushiogakure and us. Mito carried the fox for many years, but when she became elderly, there needed to be a new host. The fox is so powerful that only a Uzumaki can be its Jinchuruiki. Uzushiogakure sent over a young girl who had unique chakra even for her clan. That girl was your mother, Kushina Uzumaki." Naruto went slack-jawed, his mind trying to comprehend every word. He then asked the only question he could think of. "What was she like?" A slight smile came over Hiruzen's lips as he flashed through bittersweet memories. "She and you are the spitting image of one another. Because of her hair and her status as a foreigner, she was singled out a lot as a child. Her energy was limitless, loud, headstrong, and out to prove to the world that she was the best." Tears filled Hiruzen's eyes, but he kept himself from crying as he continued. "She even said she wanted to become Hokage despite everyone who picked on her." That proclamation made Naruto break down fully into tears. Despite not knowing her or what she looked like, he began to feel closer to his mother than anyone he had ever known, giving him a mixture of happiness and mourning for the mother he never knew. Hiruzen continued. "She grew up to be a fine kunoichi, but eventually got married and decided to start a family, and she became pregnant with you." Hiruzen paused as the silent question from Naruto and Anko filled the air. "Who was Naruto's father?" Hiruzen spoke. "I should have told you about your mother years ago, but the identity of your father is something that I must stress. No matter the reason, must not leave this room. I trust you too to keep this under wraps." Anko's mind went into overdrive as she began to connect the dots. For the identity of Naruto's father to be such a serious secret, it left only a minuscule amount of options. Her mind then stalled, and she stopped as she envisioned spiky yellow hair and a beaming smile. Her eyes widened as she looked at Naruto, knowing Hiruzen's next words. "Your father, Naruto, is the fourth Hokage Minato Namikaze." Naruto's mouth was agape at the revelation. Hiruzen continued trying to force out the end of the story as the conversation had begun taking an emotional toll on him as well. "When a Jinchuruiki gives birth, it weakens their seal, but both Minato and Kushina were proficient in the art, and they took extra precautions to ensure that your birth would be successful. But somehow, the seal was broken, and the fox escaped. After your father defeated it, I found the two of them near death, and they entrusted you to me." Hiruzen choked on tears as he said the last sentence, but he continued. "Originally, I was going to have your godfather Jiraiya, your father's sensei, raise you, but he refused, and what happened that I had no excuse for. In truth, Naruto, I have never been a good parent. I failed to raise my own children, and after the death of Bawako and being forced to retake the position as Hokage, I was overwhelmed. The village, grief and guilt made me apathetic for many years. It was during this time I made the worst decisions in my life. From the Uchiha massacre, from letting my bastard student go, to failing to raise and protect you, Naruto. I wasn't strong enough. I was a weak old man who wanted to retire. I failed. I failed the village, I failed your parents, and most importantly of all, I failed you, Naruto, and for that, I am truly sorry." The room was quiet for several minutes, not knowing what to do as the emotional whiplash of the conversation overwhelmed him. Naruto slowly turned around and walked out of the room. Anko didn't try to stop him. She couldn't imagine what he was going through, and she knew it was best for him to be alone right now. She then turned to Hiruzen and walked over. "I thought I would have a few choice words for you, but I don't think there's anything I can say that will make you feel worse than you already do. But now I know there's another person who needs their ass kicked. Where the hell is Jiraiya?" "Oh, so you know he's in town?" "It isn't hard to guess. Some of the world's most powerful and influential people are here. Plus, considering where we are, it's not a surprise if he would be here if the exams weren't going on. I recently received confirmation that he's in the city, although he hasn't reached out to me yet, and I don't have any idea where he is currently located. Well, it looks like I need some searching then? Anko said as she made her way to the door. Before she exited, she turned around and said, "Just because I didn't say anything now doesn't mean I will later. Trust me, we will have a long discussion soon." "I wouldn't expect anything less," said Hiruzen. Anko then opened the door and left to explore the streets of Center Spring to look for the Toad Sage. Anko walked through the streets of Center Spring. She had just visited her 7th establishment and had come up with no hair or sign of Jiraiya. Getting frustrated, she was about to retire the search for tonight, but suddenly she heard a cacophony of feminine laughter from a building across the street caught her attention. She examined the building. It was clearly some kind of cabaret club. She entered the establishment rather sparsely, with a few customers and hostesses seating them, but the table near the back was overfilled with 7 hostesses, the mass of them hiding the customers from the table. She ignored the employees, waning her way as she forced her way through and made her way toward the table. As she got to the far side, she saw him. Jiraiya was a tall and well-built man with fair skin. He had waist-length, spiky white hair tied back into a ponytail, with 2 shoulder-length bangs framing his face. There were red lines under his eyes, which extended further down his face. He wore a short green shirt, kimono, and matching pants. Underneath, he wore mesh armor that was visible at his wrists and ankles. He also wore handguards, a black belt, traditional Japanese wooden sandals, and a red haori with 2 yellow circles on each side. Additionally, he wore a horned forehead protector with the kanji for oil. A large scroll leaned against the table. Anko walked forward and cleared her throat loudly, gaining the attention of everyone at the table. There was a brief flash of confusion when Jiraiya spotted her, but it quickly turned into a jovial smile. "Oh, aren't you a sight for sore eyes? Ladies, this beautiful young woman here is Anko Mitarashi, one of the bright young ninjas of Konoha and an old acquaintance of mine." The hostess said greetings and waved at Anko, but Anko barely acknowledged their presence as she continued to stare down Jiraiya. Jiraiya, gaining a bad feeling from his well-trained intuition, kept his jovial attitude and asked Anko, "So, Anko, what brings you here? Would you like to join us for a drink?" "No, thank you. And I'm here to speak to you about an issue from your past. Something of the blonde variety," Anko said, trying to be discreet. Jiraiya's mood instantly shifted, and he sighed. "Sorry, ladies, it looks like I'll have to leave early tonight." He then put down a big tip on the table. "Make sure you split that amongst yourselves, and don't worry, this won't be the last time I'll be here." After several moments, Jiraiya got up as the hostess said their goodbyes, and he followed Anko onto the street. They only walked a dozen feet or so before Anko stopped, turned, and began to stare intensely at Jiraiya. The silence was overwhelming, and Jiraiya gulped as he began to speak. "Now I can." Anko slapped Jiraiya, the noise of the hit echoing through the street, and Anko's hand left a red imprint across his face. "Okay, I deserve that, but..." Anko slapped him again. "Do you know how much it would hurt for you to find out that someone who was supposed to take care of you refused to raise you? Not just that, spend your entire life away from you knowing you had no one else to raise you. I've looked up to you for years, but what kind of man abandons a child when they need you the most?" Jiraiya rubbed the side of his face and sighed. "A coward, Anko. That's the kind of man that does that. It doesn't matter why I did it, but I did, and I've regretted it every day. Sadly, despite my preaching for the next generation, it seems I picked up a few bad habits from my sensei when it comes to reliability in my personal life." Jiraiya then looked up at the night sky. "I kept up with him every time I messaged the old man. I have a book documenting everything he told me about the boy. I've tried almost a dozen times to meet him, but each time I chicken out. I was going to introduce myself as a stranger to the kid, but it looks like you're not letting me weasel my way out of this one. I promise I'll talk to him tomorrow and tell him everything." Anko squeezed her fists together, her anger fading slightly. "Why should I let you? You don't deserve to be in his life. You don't have to. It's clear to me you have Naruto's best interest in mind. If you want me to, I'll stay out of the kid's life. But if you let me, I'll do everything in my power to make sure that he's ready for whatever is thrown at him. I swear on my honor that I will do what I can to make this right," Anko stated. But then she let out a breath. She was holding a spoke. "Fine, but if you hurt him, then you're going to have a hell of a lot more to worry about than guilt. You can see him tomorrow, and you will tell him everything you got." "Got it. Good." Anko then looked at him and scoffed. "Legendary ninja, my ass. More like washed-up old drunk, she said as she began to walk away from him. As she walked away, Jiraiya spoke. You know, I'm glad that he has someone like you in his life. You truly care for him. Anko ignored him as she left Jiraiya alone on the empty city street. Hiruzen was awoken by some knocks on the door to his bedroom. He shambled up and got dressed, and when he opened the door, Anbu was standing there. Sir, a girl wishes to see you. She claims she is a Uzumaki. Hiruzen's sleepiness left him as he realized this must have been the girl Naruto spoke of last night. Go ahead and send her up. I'll speak to her immediately. Several minutes later, Karen was sitting in front of him, a ball of nerves. Hiruzen spoke. Naruto briefly told me about you last night. It's a warming sight to see that the Uzumaki clan is still alive among its descendants. Actually, Hokage, sir, that's what I wanted to talk about. You see, I'm currently a hidden grass ninja, and I was looking to see if... Karen trailed off. Hiruzen gave a grandfatherly smile and said, Have no worries about your question. I will be open to hearing anything. Karen inhaled a breath and let it out before she spoke her following words. I wish for you to force the grass to give me to your village on the grounds of my heritage. Kakashi sat down on the roof of the hotel where they were staying, looking up at the night sky. He usually struggled to sleep most nights, but tonight was especially difficult. He noticed Naruto's out-of-character behavior earlier while they were out in town. It was subtle, but he was slightly less talkative and expressive. Not to even mention the apparent attempt for him to speak to Anko alone. His curiosity was piqued, so on their way back, he asked Sakura and Sasuke for more details about what had happened during the exams. While Sasuke's confrontation with the blood manipulator was something he needed to look into in the future, the detail that caught Kakashi's interest was focused on the clan name of the girl they rescued. Naruto had found out his true heritage. A mixture of guilt and sorrow flooded Kakashi, weighing him down like an anchor for the rest of the evening. As soon as he returned to the hotel, he said his goodbyes to Sakura and Sasuke and went off to sulk in peace. His mind was waylaid by the memory of Kushina and Minato. After their deaths, he truly felt he had nothing outside of duty, and even now, the grief was still suffocating. Kakashi noticed Naruto come down the hotel's path. His eyes were puffy and red, and he looked exhausted. Kakashi decided it was best for him not to speak to him since he was not in the best state of mind. He watched Naruto enter the building and stared at the door for several more minutes before he looked back up to continue looking at the night sky. Around an hour and a half later, another person landed on the roof beside him. Kakashi, still staring up at the sky, acknowledged their arrival. Hey, were you out doing some late-night exploring? Anko walked toward Kakashi, and as she took a seat next to him, she said, Nah, I was just out looking for some deadbeats. Ah, so you've already talked to Jiraiya and the Hokage. I guess I'm next on the list, huh? Not in the same way. Trust me, I've already gotten most of my anger out. At this point, I'm just trying to hear the full story. I can't wrap my head around it. How can the kid of the most beloved man in the village be treated as a nuisance and a pariah? Said Anko. Kakashi sighed. I wonder that myself, too. The kids had a tough go of it, that's for sure. Anko turned to Kakashi. I have to know. Did you know all this time that Naruto was the fourth son? Kakashi nodded. Minato and Kushina kept me close after I lost my teammates. I was one of the first to know of Kushina's pregnancy. I remember being very happy for them. So what happened? Because from what I can remember, the first time Naruto met you was during the bell test. Kakashi closed his eye and took a deep breath as his mind raced through the painful memories. He had thought about Kushina and Minato over the years, but this was the first time he had discussed his relationship with them and Naruto with anyone. That part of my life is a haze. I was more machine than man. I was only worried about 3 things: eating, sleeping, and working, while sometimes skipping the first 2. I didn't know Naruto was alive until a few days after the Ninetales attack, but I couldn't face him because I wasn't strong enough. Kakashi looked down at that shame filling his voice. And with the village being in disrepair, my role in the Anbu increased tenfold. I would go on month-long mission marathons, hopping from one assignment to the next. Some people call it my prime. I completed hundreds of missions and saved the village's ass more times than I could count. I would have died doing that if it wasn't for Guy a few years back. He organized a few of the others and demanded the Hokage to take me out of Anbu. That definitely sounds like something Guy would do, Anko said as she smiled at the thought of their eccentric friend. After I got out, I was faced with the reality that it had been a decade, and the kid of my sensei was being treated like the plague around the village. Did you ever introduce yourself to him? Kakashi shook his head. If I was going to enter Naruto's life, I would need to explain everything, who he is and who his parents are. I couldn't lie to him and pretend I didn't know his parents. Plus, the Hokage forbade me from telling Naruto about Minato and Kushina, so instead, I made the Hokage promise that I would be Naruto's sensei. Anko did not respond, trying to take everything in. The two of them remained silent for several more minutes until Anko broke the silence. I don't blame you. Kakashi's eye widened in slight shock, as he was expecting at least some anger from Anko. I mean, how old were you? Like 14 shit? When I was that age, I was in a very dark place too. I didn't have your issue of being numb, but it was that I felt everything too much. Every comment made me irrationally angry, sad, or paranoid. I would threaten civilians, fight teammates, and be a menace for the smallest of things. I couldn't imagine trying to help a child during that time. I mean, I couldn't even help myself. I guess being a ninja isn't exactly the most healthy career mentally, Kakashi tried to say in a joking tone, but the truth of his words nullified it. Yeah, the two remained silent for another long moment. So what are we going to do tomorrow? You never really explained to me fully how you want this training plan to work, asked Kakashi as he sparked a new conversation. Most of their skills are already up to par for the tournament, but you know better than I do that they need to start focusing on becoming elite in just one of two areas. Focusing on that will make them better ninjas in the long run. Kakashi nodded. Makes sense. Do you have any ideas? I do have some suggestions, but at the end of the day, each of them will have to make that decision for themselves. I'll give them until tomorrow evening to come up with an answer, and after that, we are going to move heaven and earth to get them to their goal. Kakashi and Anko continued to converse until both of them retired to their rooms prepared for the following day. Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruto were awoken by a loud noise. They shot up out of their beds, ready to engage any potential enemies, only to see Anko holding a metal pan in her hand. Why, Sensei? You know we had a hard few days, complained Sakura as she covered her pillow over her head. Naruto leaned forward, still drowsy. He had a lot of trouble falling asleep last night, and Sasuke fully got out of bed and began stretching. Why did you have to wake us up so early? Asked Naruto as he rubbed the sleep out of his eyes. Anko grinned. Like I told you yesterday, the three of you will have today to decide how you want your training to progress. Don't you and Kakashi-sensei decide that? Anko crossed her arms. Up until now, we have, but going forward, for the three of you to reach your full potential, you will have to decide for yourselves how you want to get stronger. I'm not opposed to the idea, but is there any particular reason why? Asked Sasuke. Take my word for it. I became a much more versatile and stronger ninja as I moved away from my sensei's teachings, and the same was true for Kakashi. What we have taught you so far should be the foundation, and going forward, the three of you should build off of that into the ninja you want to become. Anko said, confident in her words from her own experience. So what do we do? Asked Sakura. Anko shrugged. Anything really. Explore the city, relax, talk to friends, meditate, but by the end of the day, I want the three of you to have an answer. Sakura felt anxiety race through her. But what if we don't come up with an answer by tonight? Anko beamed a smile at Sakura. I have full confidence that each of you will. She then turned to Naruto and said, and Naruto, you will have most of the day free, but there's someone who wants to speak to you. Naruto looked puzzled, but his mood immediately dampened as he thought of the revelations of the previous night, the morning haze blocking out the memories. Sakura and Sasuke noticed Naruto's change in mood, but Anko gave them both a look that said they should leave him alone for now. Anko then opened the door and began to exit. Well, Sasuke and Sakura, I hope the two of you have a great day. Naruto, after you get ready, you can meet me by the front of the hotel. Naruto acknowledged her with a nod, and Anko left the Genin to their own devices as the three of them prepared to make a decision that would affect the rest of their ninja careers. As soon as Sakura left the hotel, she made her way to the hospital to visit Ino. She had heard from Anko and Kakashi about her condition and was eager to see her friend. As she entered the building, she saw a familiar face at the reception. Hinata, Sakura said as she made her way toward her friend. Hinata turned around and gave a gentle smile. Hey Sakura, it's good to see you. Sakura went to embrace Hinata, and she graciously accepted. After they let go of the hug, Sakura took a slight step back and said, I heard about what happened from Sasuke. Are you okay? Hinata nodded. Thankfully, thanks to him, no one suffered significant injuries. Hinata's face then darkened slightly. Are you here to see Ino as well? Yeah, I wanted to visit yesterday, but apparently, she was still going through treatment. Would you like to go together then? Offered Hinata. Of course. The two of them then checked in and made their way to Ino's room, where she had been moved into a regular hospital room earlier that morning. As they approached the room, the door opened, and out exited Shikamaru yawning. Upon seeing them, he raised a hand up in a lazy greeting and said, "Hey, you two here to see Ino?" Sakura nodded. Yes. Has she been awake yet? A little. She was awake for a little bit after she moved rooms. She said she felt okay, just really tired. She's been asleep for a while now, Shikamaru said as he stretched. Anyways, I promised Choji I would bring him something to eat. I'll be back later. Hinata and Sakura said their goodbyes to Shikamaru and made their way into Ino's room. As they both entered, they saw a sleeping Ino. She had some stitches on the right side of her forehead where a wound had opened up, her right arm was in a cast, and both her legs were in big casts and secured on the bed. Both Hinata and Sakura were slightly taken aback by the sight. Both of them had heard of the severity of Ino's injuries, but to see them up close was disconcerting. Both of them took a seat as they gazed at Ino's sleeping form. Hinata looked away and turned her eyes downward. How terrible. I don't even want to think about how much pain she was in. Sakura's expression tightened as she looked over her friend. From what she heard, the majority of her injuries were dealt with in one strike, which caught her off guard. The thought disturbed Sakura to her core. To think that a person as vibrant and headstrong as Ino could be reduced to this after one attack. Something like that could happen to anyone not named Naruto. It could happen to her. What if they were to come across the man that Team 10 came across? Would this be her? All of her training and preparation become useless in the face of a single lapse of focus. Sakura began to spiral deeper into her anxieties, but it was interrupted as Ino began to stir in her sleep. Sakura and Hinata sat up at attention as they hovered over their friends. Ino's eyelids began to flutter before she opened her sky blue orbs and saw the smiling faces of her two friends. A small smile came across Ino's face as she said weakly, "Hey guys." Her voice was dry and raspy, and she began to cough. Hinata immediately went to grab a nearby water bottle and began to serve it to Ino. Ino took deep gulps, trying to hydrate her throat. Hinata moved the bottle away and asked, "Are you okay, Ino?" "As okay as I can be, compared to how much pain I was in a few days ago. I feel like I'm in heaven now." Ino looked over to Sakura, who hadn't spoken to her yet. "What's up, forehead? Come to visit me." Not to even say anything. Tears began to well up in Sakura's eyes as she went to hug Ino. "Ow, ow, watch you idiot. I'm not exactly 100% here. What's gotten into you?" Sakura quickly let go. "Sorry, it just..." Sakura paused for a movement. "You almost died, Ino. And it took me seeing you like this for me to realize it." A slight frown came over Ino's face. "Well, I'm alive now, aren't I? So there's no use thinking about it," Ino tried to say confidently, but it was clear that her close brush with death had affected her as well. Sakura wiped some tears from her eyes and began to take a seat. "Yeah, you're right. I should just be happy you're alive." Hinata looked over to Ino, hesitant in her next words. "If you don't mind, would you like to talk about what happened?" "Only if you want to, of course." Ino thought for a moment and nodded, then began recounting the events leading up to her attack. "To think that one attack could do all this, you should have been more observant," said Sakura. Ino rolled her eyes. "Thank you, Captain. It's obvious, but we were already on edge big time. We hadn't spotted him for a solid 10 minutes before he swung at me. The only way I could have avoided that attack was if my skin deflected it." A spark went off in Sakura's mind, and she turned toward Ino to fuel it further. "What did you say?" Ino raised her eyebrow, confused. "What about us not seeing him for like 10 minutes? "No, the last thing you said, that the only way I could have stopped his attack was if I deflected it with my skin." An explosion went off into Sakura's brain as ideas began to surge forth. "Oh my god, Ino, you're a genius." Ino gave a blank look. "Wait, I am?" She then took on a smug expression. "I mean, of course I am, among many other things." Hinata looked over to Sakura. "What do you mean, Sakura?" "I don't know right now, but I'm sure Anko or Kakashi Sensei might know something." Sakura said more, mumbling to herself. Ino laid back in her bed and smiled. "Whatever, you little weirdo." Ino's offhand comment noticeably lightened Sakura's mood as the three of them continued to talk for most of the day. Sasuke wondered about the various pathways leading through the land of hot water. The paved roads led to many small villages and markets that sold a variety of goods. He ignored them as he was deep in thought about where he should take his development as a ninja next. His goal was to be elite in just about every skill he could, but having to focus on one or two for the next month was turning out to be a difficult decision. He could pick up a new skill or aim to improve his others. He, without a doubt, wanted to improve his ninjutsu capability and continue to alter and create new techniques from the ones he had, but it was not the only thing he wanted to focus on. For a while now, he had felt that he was missing something from his repertoire, and he was taking this walk to focus on what that was. His thoughts were interrupted as he heard the distant sounds of metal. Sasuke then looked around his surroundings. He had traveled quite a distance from the hotel and was in an unfamiliar area. He heard the noise again and, in his curiosity, chose to follow it. It led him to a clearing. Nearby, standing in it, was a girl he immediately recognized from the first exam, Karatsu. She was standing in the center with her eyes closed. She was surrounded by a bunch of vaguely human-shaped rock pillars, with her hand on her sheath. In an instant, she unsheathed her blade and began a dance as she slashed each of the rocks, slicing through them like silk. Her speed was incredible, as she managed to slice each pillar with ease and precision, decimating all of them in a matter of moments. Sasuke watched in awe at the display. Karatsuchi then returned to the center of the clearing, went through a few hand signs, put her foot on the ground, and out of the ground came a new set of similarly shaped pillars. She then spoke. "Are you here to watch my skill in person, Uchiha? I will warn you. My greatness cannot be copied, even with those eyes of yours." Karatsuchi turned, wearing an impossibly smug expression on her face, instantly causing some anger to rise in Sasuke. Sasuke collected himself and took a deep breath before responding. "I was just taking a walk and stumbled upon you. I was just leaving, actually." Sasuke began to turn around and leave, but Karatsuchi yelled after him. "A likely story from a Leaf Inn. To think your village would stoop so low that they would send you here to steal my swordsmanship techniques? Despicable." Bat. Sasuke took the bait and turned around. "As if I would try to copy anything from you. It would be a disgrace to my clan to copy your sloppy technique." Karatsuchi's face somehow grew more smug as she stared at Sasuke. "Now I'm sure you're lying because my swordsmanship is nothing short of perfection. It would take an amateur, a fool, or a liar to say otherwise." Sasuke's face turned red in rage, but he calmed himself and took a deep breath. As he collected his thoughts, he finally found out what his answer to his teachers would be later in the day. He looked up at Karatsu. "You're right. I've never picked up a sword in my life. That's why, over the next month, I will learn to weld one and beat you in the second round with only a blade," Sasuke said, his tone making it seem as if it was already a fact. Karatsuchi laughed at the absurd declaration and yelled, "As if I've held a sword in my hand for as long as I can remember. An absolute tool like yourself could never think about catching up to me in a lifetime, much less a month." Sasuke ignored her as he walked away with her, putting daggers on his back as he left. Naruto followed Anko, his head down, as he was still struggling to come to terms with everything he had learned the previous day. His dad was the fourth Hokage, his hero. Each time he thought about it, it felt fake, as if he was in a dream or one huge prank was being played on him. Anko spoke. "You must really be deep in thought. You haven't even asked any questions about where we're going or who you're meeting." Naruto looked up. "Oh, sorry, it's just a lot. You know, don't worry. I get it. You probably still have a lot of questions, but luckily, the person we are seeing has quite a few." Naru perked up. "Who is it?" "Your father's Sensei and your godfather, Jiraiya." Naruto furrowed his brows and crossed his arms. "Hell now, there's no way I'm going to see that bum. He didn't want to talk to me for 12 years. Why does he want to talk to me now? Trust me, I would prefer you not talk to the guy either, but outside of his status as a bum, he is one of the best teachers in the world and is probably the only guy who can help you with your fox problem. You want him to teach me? No way. I'm not forcing you to be his student. All I'm saying is that the only reason I'm considering this is because of what he can teach you. Like I said earlier, you don't have to be taught anything by him. You can walk away and choose never to speak to him again, but you should hear what he has to say first." "Fine." The two of them continued until they made their way to a set of stairs that led up to a shrine. Anko then looked to Naruto and said, "He should be at the top sitting at the shrine. Are you not coming up with me?" asked Naruto. Anko shook her head. "Nope. This has to be a conversion between you and him," Naruto sighed, and he began to make his way up to the top of the shrine. As soon as he reached the top, there was a puff of smoke as he saw the old man sitting on top of a large toad. He then stood up and smiled brightly. "You may be wondering who I am." Jiraiya then dramatically began to swing his long hair in a circle. "I am the man who has no enemies in the north, south, east, and..." Naruto turned around and started to make his way back down the stairs. "Oh wait, don't go yet," Jiraiya yelled as he leaped off the toad and dismissed it. Naruto turned around, his face full of disinterest. Jiraiya then dropped his smile and spoke. "I'm sorry." Jiraiya then sat down cross-legged and patted them down in front of him. "You deserve answers, and I will be willing to give as many as you want." Naruto took a quick look back down the hill and sighed as he approached Jiraiya and took a seat on the ground. "Okay, before anything, I would like to start off with a story." Naruto, growing impatient, said, "I thought you were going to tell me about my parents." "Don't worry, I am. But this is important." Naruto sighed and waved his hand, signaling his acceptance. Jiraiya cleared his throat and began. "This one is called The Coward's Tale. It begins with a boy whose dream is to become the greatest ninja the world has ever seen. The only problem he had was that he had very little talent for the craft at first, but through hard work and guts, he managed to land on a team with two people. One of them turns out to be his first love, and the other his best friend. Naruto, at first, was wholly disinterested in the tale, but as it continued, he focused more and more on Jiraiya's story. As the boy became a man and the three of them grew, they ended up becoming strong and began to prosper. But there was something the man was looking for outside of his life as a ninja. He was looking for a pupil that would change the fate of the world for the better, a foolish task, but one he put his whole being into. His first pupil was strong, born with eyes that made him destined for greatness, and set on a path to change the world. But sadly, after leaving him and his friends, the man later learned of their deaths. Still on the path of his goal, the man eventually took on another pupil, a young boy smart enough to solve any problem with his mind. The pupil eventually went on to surpass the man in strength, and the man thought he had completed his mission. But as the years went by, with his first love long gone and his best friend going astray, the only solace left was his pupil and his beautiful wife, who they entrusted with their soon-to-be-born child. Jiraiya's voice cracked, and tears began to stream down his face. But he continued the story. He accepted the honor, not expecting to have to take the role. But one day, a great disaster struck and a great beast attacked. The pupil and his wife sacrificed their lives to defeat the beast, leaving behind their child and the man who had promised them to take up the honor. Instead, overwhelmed with grief, ran and hid away like a coward, getting lost in worldly pleasures, delusions of duty to his village. Jiraiya then performed a deep bow, his forehead touching the dirt in front of Naruto, as he finished his story through tears. And now, years later, he sits in front of the boy he abandoned, desperately asking for forgiveness for his cowardice. Naruto sat there stunned and in silence. He didn't know what to expect when meeting his godfather, but it wasn't this. Naruto awkwardly rubbed the back of his head. "Come on, old guy. You can get up." Jiraiya raised his head and wiped away some tears. "Sorry, I shouldn't even be the one crying right now." After that statement, the two of them didn't utter a word for several minutes until Naruto spoke. "Could you tell me about my parents?" A small smile came over Jiraiya's lips. "Certainly." Jiraiya then recounted to Naruto stories of his parents, from their youths to how they met to their adulthood. Naruto hung on to every word as he began to feel closer and closer to his parents after each story. Early morning turned to afternoon, and afternoon turned into evening as an orange hue overtook the sky. Jiraiya looked up and said, "It looks like we've been talking far longer than I expected. Look, Naruto, there is more I wish to offer you than stories of your parents." "You mean training?" Jiraiya nodded. "I could teach you how to control your tailed beast, as well as some other things if you'll allow me." Naruto sat silent for a moment. "Listen, I won't forgive you for what you did, but you actually seem sorry and that you want to make things right, and I know if I did something wrong, I would want a second chance, so I'm willing to train with you, but you're on thin ice." Jiraiya beamed a smile at Naruto. "Thanks, kid. I really appreciate it. Naruto smiled slightly and said his goodbyes as he made his way back to the hotel to inform his senseis of his decision. Kakashi and Anko gathered the three of them outside the hotel as the sun began to set. "So, have the three of you come to a decision?" asked Anko. The three of them then respond in unison. "Yes."